The rumbling of the truck slowed to a stop, and I struggled to stand up, but suddenly it reversed. A violent jolt rocked the truck, followed by the creaking of doors and light pouring into the trailer. A group of armed guards entered, while medical technicians waited outside. "Everyone out," one of the guards commanded. "Please don't hurt us," I pleaded. A DSA doctor stepped forward with an air of authority, trying to reassure us. "Hurt you? We're saving you. Follow us. We have set up a welcoming dinner." Hesitantly, we stood our ground, eyeing them cautiously. Finally, a guard approached us, urging, "Come on, we don't have all day." We were escorted into a well-lit warehouse with working electricity. Some of the vaulters looked on in awe, still unused to such luxury. Led into a back room, a feast was laid out on a table: burgers, hot dogs, sausages, and bacon. Many of us greedily grabbed and snatched at the offering. My stomach growled, and the food reminded me of my mom's cooking. Without thinking, unable to stop myself grasping strips of bacon, I took a bite. But something was off. The meat didn't taste right, leaving a mushy texture in my mouth. Before I could figure it out, a technician sitting next to me interrupted. "Name?" "What?" I asked, bewildered. "Name?" the technician repeated firmly. "Catherine," I replied. "Full name? Do you know it?" the technician probed. "Why do you want to know?" I questioned, feeling guarded. "Education policy. Now, name, date of birth, parents' history," the technician demanded. Reluctantly, I provided them with my details. "Catherine Johnson, we have a profile on you. It's finally nice to meet you." "I'm sorry about your parents," the technician said, trying to offer sympathy. "You should be. You killed them," I shot back, anger simmering within. "Mistakes are common outside the DSA. I'll raise it up with management," the technician responded coldly, seemingly unaffected. My fist clenched. Just then, a bell rang, and another group of technicians wheeled in a cart filled with bowls of pudding. They handed us each a bowl, instructing us to wait before eating. The lead doctor stood at the head of the table and addressed us. "Comrades, it's a pleasure to have you joining the Directive States of America today. The road ahead will not be easy, but together we will overcome, adapt, and build utopia together." He gestured for us to start eating. After only a few bites, a bitter taste filled my mouth, and my eyes became heavy. Before I knew it, I collapsed into my bowl, unconscious. When I woke, my head was spinning. The room was dimly lit, and I struggled to make out my surroundings. Panic set in as I tried to move, but I soon realized I was tightly restrained, tied to a cold metal bed. My clothes had been removed, leaving me vulnerable and exposed. A group of nurses moved around me, their faces shrouded behind full face masks. I could feel their eyes on me, cold and indifferent. Tubes and wires were attached to my body, and the medical equipment hummed ominously. I watched them take blood samples with deliberate force. "Help, help," I called out desperately, my voice echoing through the sterile, oppressive room. "It's too early for her to be waking. Sedate her again," one of the nurses said coldly, her voice devoid of any empathy. "No, no," I protested, trying to resist, but a nurse quickly grabbed a needle and injected it into my arm. What felt like ice as it flowed through my veins, causing a numbness to spread throughout my body. My vision blurred, and my heartbeat seemed to slow down, drowning out the sounds around me. Darkness enveloped me, and a suffocating sense of dread washed over me as my consciousness faded to black. When I awoke in the dorm, my head was pounding, and bruises covered my arms. As I sat up, several women, similar in age, were huddled together, whispering in hushed tones. One of them noticed me and said, "Hey, you're awake now." Confused, I asked, "What's going on?" "We don't know. We saved you some breakfast," another woman replied, her voice trembling. "Don't get your hopes up. It's only a protein bar," a third woman added, handing me a gray, tasteless bar. Approaching 8 a.m., the lock on the door clicked, and a well-dressed woman entered, flanked by armed guards. "Hello, students," she greeted us with an air of authority. "Students?" I questioned, trying to make sense of the situation. "Quiet. Now please follow the security forces to class," she commanded, her voice cold and unwavering. The guards lined us up, and we walked in a line, passing classrooms filled with children, teens, and adults. The woman in front of me glanced around, and the well-dressed woman scolded, "Eyes forward!" "Yes, ma'am." The woman quickly corrected herself, her voice trembling. The well-dressed woman approached, irritated. "We don't use that language here." "What language?" the woman asked, still trembling. "Oppressive, old-world gender terms," the well-dressed woman explained. "I only said yes, ma'am," the woman responded, staring at the floor, unable to bring herself to look up. The well-dressed woman signaled her guards, and they grabbed the woman in front of me. "Maybe you're more cut out for the factory after all," she sneered as guards dragged her away. As we entered the classroom, the well-dressed woman stood at the front and introduced herself as our teacher. "I'll be responsible for your education to prepare you for our society. I ask you to forget the barbaric old ways. You may call me teacher." One woman raised her hand hesitantly. "Miss, I remember something similar back in school before the mist." Teacher slammed her fists on the desk. "What did I just say?" "Sorry, teacher." The woman quickly apologized, shrinking back in fear. "Better. Should this be our first lesson?" Teacher asked, her eyes piercing with an unsettling intensity. The classroom was engulfed in an air of uneasiness as teacher settled herself and opened her planner with a sense of authority. "Welcome to Cincinnati. Welcome to the new Directive States of America," she announced. "You are here today because you have the potential to serve in our democracy, but first, you will need to learn from your past." Teacher proceeded to hand out booklets on critical race theory, explaining, "We aim to approach grappling with a historical old-world misguided supremacy that rejects the belief that what's in the past is in the past, and that the laws and systems that grow from that past are detached from it." I looked at teacher, confused by her words, but she continued. "Racism was a normal experience for most people of color, female identifying, same-sex, and wealth inequality. A large part of the old society had no interest in doing away with inequality because it benefited white elites, who promoted further inequality and division. But no longer will such inequality happen under the DSA government. Together, we will win." Teachers' lectures dragged on for hours, and lunch offered no respite, with each student given a gray protein brick at their desk, a bleak reminder of our imprisonment. As the day neared 7 p.m., teacher gave us a quiz to test our understanding of Newspeak. The atmosphere was suffocating, and fear seemed to be an integral part of this new life under the DSA's oppressive rule. "Listen closely, you," teacher's voice pierced the tense air of the classroom. "If I say, a staff member in D.C. earns less than he would in New York?" "A staff member in D.C. earns less than one in New York," the student replied nervously, trying to avoid eye contact. "Good," teacher responded with a cold, calculating gaze. "And you, pay attention. If a complainant is not satisfied with the board's decision, he can ask for a rehearing." The student broke down in tears, stammering, "I don't know." Teacher leaned over her, exuding dominance and control. "A complainant who is not satisfied can ask for a rehearing. You can stay back after class." Her words were laced with a venom, sending shivers down the spines of the other students. As the tension lingered, teacher pointed at me, singling me out. "You! The author of a communication must have direct and reliable evidence of the situation he is describing." Her tone was unwavering, leaving no room for questioning her authority. Just then, a knock on the door interrupted the quiz. An elderly man, Professor Davis, entered the room in a clean-cut suit, introducing himself with an air of authority. "Good evening, miss." Teacher, eager to impress, stood up straight and welcomed him. "Professor Davis, please come in. I'm just finishing for the day." "No need. I'll be quick. I'm looking for new help," Professor Davis replied curtly. Davis then turned to us, commanding, "Ladies, line up against the wall. Face me." Teacher tried to intervene, attempting to assert her own agenda. "Professor, you don't want one of these. They just started the program. We have better, younger candidates." Unfazed by her attempts to influence him, Davis retorted, "Unlike other elites, young ones don't do anything for me." Teacher continued to protest, "But Professor, we haven't harvested these women yet." Ignoring her objections, Davis asked bluntly, Aren't these the only female adults you have? With hesitance, teacher reluctantly admitted, yes, retrievals are having a hard time recruiting. Davis made up his mind, surveying the line of women. So it's one of these fine women. A student dared to speak up, grinning as if they would be rewarded. Teacher, they'd use gender language. Enraged, teacher's face turned red, and she wasted no time in asserting her dominance. She marched straight to the woman and slapped her hard, sending shockwaves through the room. Speak when spoken to. I'm sorry, Professor. These vaulters still require programming, she said, her voice trembling with subservience. Professor Davis continued to inspect the line of women, his unsettling gaze landing on me. She could fill out a maid's outfit, he remarked. Fear gripped my heart as I asked, my voice trembling, where will I be going? With a grin, Professor Davis declared, you, my dear, will be working for me. Serve my every need. Teacher, seemingly trying to maintain some semblance of control, questioned with a smirk hiding a thinly veiled threat. Shouldn't the governor choose her too? My wife doesn't need to know. Got that? Professor Davis responded with a hint of menace. As the professor's guard raised his gun and the other guards turned around, ready to enforce Davis's command, teacher cowered, vowing not to disclose this incident to anyone. The room was heavy with dread as I was led out of the warehouse, the moon's light casting eerie shadows on the cityscape. Suddenly, a bag was placed over my head, and I was shoved into the car's boot. The voices inside the car mumbled, and tears welled up in my eyes as I pondered, where am I going? What's happening?